He got in the building. He went into one of the new rear exam rooms, poured gasoline all around, lit the fire, and got out of the building. So you could see him running away from the building, getting back into the truck and driving away.
Hey, my friends, you're going to want to pay attention to this story. This is an unbelievable story of ongoing persecution by the FBI. What you're going to hear is so stunning, and the fact that it's happening in America to an American citizen who's now dead is unreal. Remember the Mark Houck situation where the FBI went after Mark and his family and it was horrible? Yeah, he had people representing him and coming to help him as he could at that time. Imagine if you didn't have that. Imagine if the FBI went to you, did undercover stuff on you, blamed you for not going into the Capitol on January 6th, just being at the rally itself, as if that were a really bad thing. And then it looks like you're framed. Oh, and then by the way, you're arrested. Oh, but a little while later, you just die in jail. No autopsy needed for that. Oh, no. All that coming up right up with this interview with an investigator who's been writing for LifeSite on this, named Jenny Hay. You're definitely going to want to stay tuned for this one. Pope Pius XI said, men must look for the peace of Christ in the kingdom of Christ. And he urged that the faithful give public honor to Christ the King so that individuals and states would submit once more to the rule of their Savior. And that is why LifeSite News is raising up the image of Christ the King across the United States. And you can help us reach millions more. Please pledge your support today for these billboards at lifefunder.com/Christ is King. Jenny Hay, welcome to the program.
Nice to meet you, John Henry. Thank you.
Let's begin, as we always do, with the sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. So, Jenny, this is a very fascinating story. Why don't you start off, give us a little synopsis of the story before we get into depth on it.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show. This is a complex story, but I think once the whole story comes out, people will understand this is really the true crime story of the century. Big picture, in Knoxville, Tennessee, we had a Planned Parenthood burned to the ground on New Year's Eve, 2021. So almost 3 years ago. It happened at 6:30 in the morning. The whole place burned down. The Planned Parenthood sits in a residential neighborhood. None of the surrounding houses were damaged. And it came out very quickly that it was an arson. It also came out very quickly that the fire was started inside the building. Whoever did this got inside the building to start the fire. So I called up one of the editors at LifeSite News and said, hey, I'm happy to cover this for you. At the time, the building was closed. It was under construction. They were doing a $2 million renovation to double the space. An investigation ensued. I periodically called the Knoxville Fire Department to say, hey, how's the investigation going? They were responsible for the forensic aspect of the investigation. It was pretty rare that they had any updates. But I called them every month or two and said, hey, how's it going? I called them in the summer of 2022 and they said, yeah, we don't have any suspects. And then November 1st, All Saints Day, 2022, the FBI named a suspect. I had last talked to the Knoxville Fire Department in late September, and they had told me then that they didn't have any suspects. So November 1st of that year, the FBI named a suspect. And so I knew it was suspicious from the very start. So the accusations, that wasn't the only accusation against this man's name was Mark Reno, and he was deceased at the time that the FBI named him. So he had died August 15th, 2022. He died in prison. This was not the only charge against him. They had accused him of that summer shooting at a federal building twice. They accused him of this Planned Parenthood arson. There were other accusations. And so everybody assumed that he really did it because of all these accusations. But as we started to dive into these accusations one by one, they were false. He didn't burn down the Planned Parenthood. He didn't shoot at a federal building. And so that's where we are. The FBI named the wrong person for this arson, but it definitely wasn't arson. Somebody on purpose burned this building down.
This is quite interesting. Now, the story, I guess, from the FBI's would be also that it is, it's intentional. But there was video involved. And that's one of the things that was really fascinating. When they released video, you were able to say, wait a minute, and find some weird stuff about that. Tell us about that.
Sure. So Planned Parenthood security video captured the whole thing. And the Knoxville Fire Department had that within days of the arson. We have an analogy to FOIA in Tennessee where you can request public records. So we requested records from the fire department, and they turned over this video to us. And LifeSite News was very good to help us put it together into a coherent story. Whenever you get security video, there's a lot of dead time. But you can see everything. You can see the arsonist arrive on the property. You can see his truck. His truck had one headlight out. It was a red GMC Sierra, manufactured sometime in the mid-2000s. You see him arrive on the property. At first, he parks away from the property and just walks around the property. Everything is in silhouette, so you don't really get a good picture of him, but you can see, his size and shape. And he walks around the property, and then he pulls his truck up into the alley behind the property. And you can see the truck, you can see the headlight out. He gets out of the truck. He leaves the view of the camera, and we know from the Knoxville Fire Department's forensic investigation that he entered the building at that point, and the only way he could get in was through the window. So because it was under construction, the new doors were blocked with plywood, and the doors from the original structure were all locked. Okay. But it was under construction, and the windows were only covered with plastic. And so the Knoxville Fire Department believed that's how he got into the building. So he cut the plastic, got into the building, poured gasoline around. Now, this is not on the video. So the video is only from outside the building, but we know from the Knoxville Fire Department investigation, he got in the building. He went into one of the new rear exam rooms, poured gasoline all around, lit the fire, and got out of the building. So you could see him running away from the building, getting back into the truck, and driving away. The whole thing was captured on video. So that's how they knew right away that it was an arson. You see the guy do it. You can see the explosion on the screen. It's really quite dramatic. Well, in the meantime, I had been writing these articles all along for LifeSite News. Each time we learned something significant. And Mark Reno's daughter got in touch with me, and she said, hey, I'd like to meet with you. And she provided me with photographs that we could put side by side with the arsonist captured by the video, and it's not the same person. This arsonist was very thin, very tall, very lanky. He had to be pretty agile to get into these windows. They were not floor level windows. They were up off the ground, probably 4 feet. And you look at the profile picture of Mark Reno, who was much heavier than this guy. And it's just not the same person. Nobody who looks at these two pictures side by side thinks it's the same person. And the Knoxville Fire Department had dismissed him as a suspect. They thought, he had a similar truck to the arsonist. They thought it might have been him. Then they dismissed him. So they knew it wasn't him.
Interesting. Then what did happen with how the fire started? In your opinion, what does the evidence really point to?
Well, it was arson. Somebody did it on purpose. The fact is we don't know. We have a good silhouette of the guy. Their Planned Parenthood had both motive and opportunity to do this. We don't have all the proof to make this accusation. I don't want to make baseless accusations, but they did have motive and opportunity. The motive was when this fire happened, this was 6 months before the Dobbs decision. Now, in Tennessee, we had already passed a trigger law so that if Roe fell, this law would automatically go into effect and make abortion illegal in Tennessee. So this was 6 months before the Dobbs decision, but everybody knew that this was on the Supreme Court's agenda. It was just a couple months before the leak. Okay. But even without the leak, we were all very hopeful here. And it was not an unreasonable expectation that this was going to go our way and that abortion was going to become illegal in Tennessee. And with an 8,000 square foot space, The new addition, we think, was intended to provide surgical abortions. Up till that time, they'd been providing chemical abortions. An 8,000 square foot place in a residential neighborhood was going to be a business model that was unsustainable. And in fact, we had another abortion clinic in Knoxville that went out of business as a result of the Dobbs decision, just a couple months after the decision fell. And so that was the motive. They were not going, if there was any business model for Planned Parenthood in Tennessee post Dobbs, it wasn't going to be for an 8,000 square foot place. So they definitely had motive. They also had opportunity. You know, they were the only one. I mean, how could anybody else get inside the building? Whoever did this got inside the building to start the fire. When the firefighters arrived on the scene, they couldn't get in the building. They had to break down the doors to get in the building and fight the fire.
So what happened then at Knoxville's March for Life in 2022, and how does that figure into this story?
We're about 20 days out from the fire. There were investigators at the March for Life. There was an investigator for the Knoxville Fire Department posing among the people participating in March for Life. And they honed in on Mark Reno because he drove a red pickup truck. And a red pickup truck was captured in the video. So they honed in on Mark Reno, this investigator, undercover agent, at a pro-life event, struck up a conversation with him and started talking with him. And he said that he belonged to Church Militant Resistance, which was the political action arm of the now defunct media organization, Church Militant. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know, the neighborhood's a lot better place now that Planned Parenthood's gone. And he said some other derogatory things about the federal government. A KFD agent reported all of this back to the FBI. And so they were suspicious of him. That's what happened at the March for Life.
What did happen to Mark Reno?
After that, there was another pro-life event, probably just a prayer vigil. It's not really clear to me what it was, but there was another pro-life event near the Planned Parenthood property. And Mark Reno was at that as well. And this same undercover agent came to that event. Unappreciated part of this story is that these undercover agents are showing up at Right to Life events, checking people out.
And they pose as Right to Lifers.
Posing as Right to Lifers, yeah.
Yeah.
So this guy's again but this time he's wearing a wire. He's wearing a recording device, audio video recording device. This was April 26, 2022. He again engages Mark Reno in a conversation and records it directly to FBI equipment. So he was a Knoxville Fire Department agent. We tried to get that recording under Tennessee law, and they said, no, we never had it. We recorded directly to FBI equipment. And so we have been unable to get that recording. But aspects of that recording have been reported in FBI affidavits. So we have some idea. We got a snippet of that recording that was used at Mark Reno's trial. So he said some dumb things. He told this undercover agent that he had been at the protest at the Capitol on January 6th. That turned out to be very bad for him. So he said he participated in the January 6th protest. He was not a fan of the federal government and made that clear. He said things like, well, they're not going to arrest me for being a January 6th. I'm going to take them out first.
Wait, did he say he went into the Capitol, or is just he was at the protest?
He did not say that. And in fact, one of the FBI affidavits said that they reviewed the video and found no evidence that he went into the Capitol. So even the FBI,
you can't even go to the Trump rally. Somehow that is wrong. Like that's what's so incredible about this. There's no evidence of wrongdoing, yet that is used as a thing against him. Not one of the ones who even went into the Capitol building. No. Just he was at the rally.
There. Yeah, he was just there.
Insane.
And if it had been for anything else, that would have been fine. Right. And all this gets recorded to FBI equipment.
Truth has a power of its own. It moves hearts and saves lives. I'm pleased to announce the launch of the new LSNTV app, which can bring all of LifeSite News' top video content direct to your phone, tablet, computer, and TV so that you can bypass the censors and keep fighting with us for life, faith, family, and freedom. Don't be alone in the darkness. We've been canceled. Fight the cancellation. Download the app.
So that's what happened on April 26th. Now, it's hard to tell this story because, in fact, none of this has anything to do with Mark Reno, but he was accused of all of these things. And so he's central to the story. So they have this recording of him. They take the recording to a federal magistrate judge in Knoxville and say, hey, we need to surveil this guy. So shortly after that, they secured that recording on April 26th. They started actively surveilling him. They got permission to put tracking devices on his car. They start following him places. They have video of his cars. Then this is where the story goes completely crazy. So now we're going to leave the Planned Parenthood facility. We're going to go to another building in Knoxville. This is a federal building. It's called the John J. Duncan Building. It's named after one of our longtime representatives in this district. On June 18th, 2022, there was a window broken on the Duncan Federal Building. It's a federal building, so this was investigated by the Federal Protective Service, which is an arm of the Department of Homeland Security. So they investigated this broken window, and no one thought this was a shooting. There was an impact. You could see the point of impact. We have the photographs of the window. There's a spider web out from that, but it was a double paned window, and the second window wasn't broken. The inside window wasn't broken. There was no bullets, no shells, no casings. No one heard gunshots. I mean, no one thought this was a shooting. And the investigator for the Federal Protective Service thought that maybe it was road debris loosened by nearby construction. So across the street from where the window was broken, there was construction. When they reviewed the security video, they saw that cars were driving up on the curb to get around the construction. He said there was lots of debris around that could have been loosened and put into motion. He said maybe even it came from the construction across the street. Something was ejected and broke the window. Okay, so we have a broken window on the Duncan building. Not a soul thinks it's a shooting. Okay, 2 weeks later, on July 3rd, we have 3 more windows broken on the Duncan building. Again, no gunshots, no one calls the police, no bullets, no casings, no bullet fragments, nothing. The window, the inner pane of the window is still intact. In fact, the broken windows from July 3rd look virtually identical to the broken window on June 18th. Okay, so we have broken windows 2 weeks apart, probably due to a construction debris. On July 18th, the FBI arrests Mark Reno for shooting at these windows when no one thought it was a shooting to start with. He's indicted by a grand jury, but the grand jury was not given these reports from the Federal Protective Service. This evidence was withheld from them. There was a detention hearing. These reports from the Federal Protective Service were not on the government's evidence list for the detention hearing. They played the April 26th recording where he sounds like someone who hates the federal government. Mm-hmm.
Which you're fully allowed to do, by the way, if that's completely legal and nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah. So he is detained. The judge orders him detained until trial. We don't think his attorney even got these reports from the Federal Protective Service. That's something we're looking into right now. Okay, so that happened. He was arrested on July 18th. Detention hearing, I think, was July 26th. He's dead on August 15th. He's dead. He died in prison. The official cause of death was that he bled to death from an ulcer, but no one ordered an autopsy. He was in reasonably good health when he was arrested. He's dead 28 days later, and no one orders an autopsy.
Wow. I'm just a little bit stunned. I mean, how could they not order an autopsy when these circumstances are so strange?
So we asked that question of our representative, Tim Burchett. How could this happen? How could a January 6th, someone who they were after him because of his participation at January 6th, that's really, I think, why he was arrested. How could he just die in prison 28 days later and no one thinks this is worth looking into? So the answer was that it's not required. The answer we got from our U.S. representative, he sent us the section of the protocol for U.S. prisons that says ordering an autopsy is entirely at the discretion of the warden, really to protect the institution, not to protect the people.
Wow. And what about the family? Did the family not ask for that or anything like that?
They were in shock. When you have somebody accused of a crime like this, you almost don't know how to respond. So no, they didn't ask for an autopsy. They should have, and they wish they had now, but they didn't.
Is there any kind of answer that the authorities have to give for basically setting up a fella without giving the evidence and not letting even a jury hear the evidence that they knew would have allowed this guy to go?
Well, it's very difficult, as you might imagine, to get those answers. We have an outstanding FOIA with the FBI. They have stonewalled at every single turn. We have an outstanding lawsuit against the FBI because of their failure to adequately respond to our FOIA requests for information. We've sent letters to the U.S. District Attorney for the Eastern District of Tennessee and gotten no response. So this was not the end of the humiliation for Mark Reno and his family. On All Saints Day, November 1st, 2022, that's when the FBI and the Department of Justice, after he's dead, pin him for the Planned Parenthood arson.
All this happens before. So just that timeline again is a lot of this happens before the arson even takes place. They never pin him to it. They never have him talking about that. They don't even have him at the Capitol building. They have him at the rally. That's it. Then they'd have no evidence for these window smashings for which he's taken in, dies, and then they pin the thing on it. It's stunning.
I think all the accusations against him were a psyop on the city of Knoxville. When the FBI comes out in a public press release and says, he did this, he did this, he did this, he did this. Where there's smoke, there's fire, right? He had to have done at least one of these things. And so we all believed it until we started really looking into it.
Let's go back to the Planned Parenthood for a second. What happened to them after the arson? Did they rebuild? Where are they at right now? Where are those Planned
They
Parenthood
rebuilt a much smaller facility that fits the business model now for Tennessee, where abortions are illegal. It's a much smaller building. I don't know the square footage, but they're actually going to open on Monday. They're going to reopen.
Wow! And what kind of payout did they get? Any?
I don't know, but they were insured, and that was in the report from the Knoxville Fire Department. They thought that was important enough to put in their report that they were insured by AXL insurance.
Interesting. So what about the family now? They've worked with you obviously on that piece, at least providing pictures. They know that this was not their dad. This was not whom they're pinning it on. What's their reaction right now?
They're devastated, especially his wife. So the way the FBI made this accusation against him, since he's already dead, you can't haul him into court. So they wrote an affidavit for civil asset forfeiture, right? So the affidavit was in support of a warrant for civil asset forfeiture. So that's how logistically they made the accusation. They said, we need to go get his cars because we think he committed these crimes. He has no ability to defend himself, right? So they go, and after all of this, late October, they show up and they seize his widow's car. This is her only mode of transportation.
Oh my gosh.
And publish her address on the warrant. She's since had to move. She has something like PTSD because she expects reporters showing up at her door. And it's just the horror to have all of this happen to you. And they moved to Tennessee to retire and enjoy the freedom of what's a relatively free state in the United States, and to have all of this rain down on you. It's horrible.
The absolute viciousness of the FBI. It reminds me in some small way of what happened to Mark Houck when the FBI went after him and his small kids. And didn't matter. They didn't care.
No.
Here's another question for you. The local fire department guy who worked with them, any follow-up with him, any remorse he might now feel? Because this is insane.
Yeah, no, not that I've heard of.
Where are things for you now, Jenny, with regard to this investigation? And what do you intend to do now? Is your lawsuit still going forward, is it?
It is. We have a lawsuit against the FBI for records they haven't published. Right, you accuse somebody after they're dead and you don't publish the records, really? So we're specifically trying to get this recording that was made on April 26th. We think that's critical to understanding what happened. But really, the lawsuit is for all records related to the arson or Mark Reno. So that would include anything related to the accusation that he shot at a federal building. We have a couple outstanding FOIA requests. The potentially criminal thing here is that they were under a due process order and they withheld exculpatory evidence. So we're checking into that further. The whole process is very slow. Here's the thing. The real arsonist is actually still out there. They didn't catch the real arsonist. The real arsonist is still walking among us and the FBI doesn't care about that. We'd really like to get enough evidence to go to the Attorney General of the state of Tennessee and get a new arson investigation ordered.
Unbelievable. What can people do in this situation to help or to find out more information? And if they have information, where can they go to send it in?
Well, sure, they can contact me through my Substack, Knoxville Nobility. But there's really not a lot to do to help. This story is so sad because there's nothing that can be done except to tell the story and know it. There's nothing that can be done to help Anne Frank, but it's still important to know what happened to her and to read her diary. And that's how I feel about this story. I'd like to see all the people who did wrong come to justice. I don't know that that's going to happen on this side of eternity. I want people to know the story. So if they want to follow the story on Knoxville Nobility, my Substack, that would be great.
Awesome. You can also definitely pray. Pray for Mark, for his family, for justice to come, and for your great efforts, Jenny. You can follow Jenny Hay also at LifeSite News, because when she breaks something big, we report it there. It's been great work you've been doing. It's an awesome job, Jenny. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for all your support. I really appreciate it.
God bless you. And God bless all of you. And we'll see you next time. Hi everyone, this is John Henry Westen for LifeSite News. We hope you found this video insightful. For more content like this, be sure to check out the links in the description below. You can also follow us on social media to stay updated on the latest news concerning life, faith, family, and freedom. Thanks for watching, and may God bless you.